The year is 1996, and Capcom had released a brand new title for the Sony PlayStation. A puzzle-filled survival horror game set in a secluded mansion, and they titled it
Resident Evil.
Now, Resident Evil was not originally the puzzle-solving, zombie-shooting, and boulder-punching franchise that we all know and love today. And in fact, the game that started it all was supposed to be a remake of another horror game called Sweet Home, which Capcom had released 7 years prior in 1989. The development of this remake began in 1993, and after a number of redesigns, they shifted further and further away from their previous intentions. And this led to the final product that we all know today as Resident Evil, which Resident Evil released on March 22nd of 1996. And boy, are we glad that it did. Right off the bat, Resident Evil's critical reception was amazing, with some reviews even going as far as to give it a perfect score. And in less than 2 years after its release, Resident Evil had sold a whopping 4 million units, and received ports on both the PC and the Sega Saturn. But what made this game so special? Resident Evil featured 2 playable characters, Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, which are 2 members of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS Alpha Team, which provided the player with alternate scenarios to the same story, depending on who they choose. The gameplay featured limited inventory space, thought-provoking puzzles, horrific enemies, claustrophobic spaces, and perhaps most infamously, fixed camera angles and tank controls. But we'll come back to those last 2 later. But for now, it's easy to see that the game was true survival horror and deserved every bit of praise that it received. While the gameplay and atmosphere were phenomenal, a common opinion amongst English-speaking players seemed to point out to the weakness in the cheesy dialogue and voice acting.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
Shut your fucking mouth!
But I think that's just what gave the game even more charm. So who cares? Am I right? Anyway, fast forward 6 years to the day, because after 3 more entries in the Resident Evil series, Capcom released Resident Evil on March 22nd, 2002 on the Nintendo GameCube. Well, hold on. Wait a second. Didn't they already do this? What was so special about this port that they needed to bring it over to the GameCube? Sorry, remake. Now this is how you remake a game. With improved graphics and sound design, quality of life changes, and then Capcom even sprinkling in additions to the game, such as the terrifying Crimson Heads and the tragic story of Lisa Trevor. This only improved the modern version and stayed incredibly faithful to the original. And while the voice acting of the 1996 release had spawned numerous memes and references within the gaming sphere, the 2002 remake brought in a fresh cast of voice actors that revised the script. So overall, this was a great remake to a great game. And I really can't think of a single improvement that Capcom could have made. And then now fast forward nearly 13 years and 5 more mainline games later, and we've come to the release of the Resident Evil remake. Well, it's more of a remaster of the remake from 2002, but it still made some changes, most of which were visual. But there were little changes that they snuck in, and most of all solved the gripe that players had for years: alternate controls. Now, alternate controls don't sound like much on the surface, but in reality, it was a game changer. Some of you watching this may have experienced tank controls firsthand, and maybe even on the original of the 1996 version. But for those of you that haven't, this is a real-life example. The remaster introduced a fresh way of playing the game with one simple change. This was awesome for both new and long-term fans. However, there is still one more teensy tiny glaring issue: fixed camera angles. Now, me personally, I do not mind the fixed camera angles. I've played all the games and I do really enjoy them. But I'm not going to sit here and say that this is not a perfect experience for all new players. And honestly, this is why I hear a lot of people talk about not playing these games, because of tank controls and fixed camera angles. And as much as I love the game, I will admit that the modern controls make movement in Resident Evil very rough and very difficult to deal with. I mean, just look at this dude trying to do this puzzle. Dude, this puzzle's fucking annoying. Come on, Chris. Come on, Chris. Come on, Chris. Man? It's getting pushed again. Dude, this puzzle is so annoying, bro. Okay, god damn. There were plenty of times where I took damage because the camera angle just decided to change. I would adjust, and then Jill would turn 90 degrees at the speed of light, just to get French kissed in the carotid artery. Get off! 3 in a row? 4? This is bullshit.
This is fucking bullshit.
And this brings me to my final point. Does the Resident Evil remake need a remake? This is a divisive question in the community. Maybe not as much as the Leon and Ada versus Leon and Claire shippers, but many players seem to think it's pointless to remake the masterpiece again. While many others avoid the game due to the dated gameplay and visuals, and while I'm trying to figure out my own opinion on the matter, I gave it some more thought. Given the track record of the Resident Evil remakes being absolute cinema, except one,
oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass.
And taking a look at the modern state of the franchise, it really feels like Capcom wants to do more with Chris and Wesker. And let me explain. We haven't seen Chris in a major role for quite a while. He's had small parts in Resident Evil Biohazard, and as well as Village, and he was also mentioned in Resident Evil Requiem, but we haven't seen anything substantial from this character in over a decade. The same goes for Wesker, just in a different sense. With the release of Resident Evil 4 Remake in 2023, and especially the inclusion of the Separate Ways DLC, Wesker made a noticeable appearance in the game. And for anyone that has played or watched Requiem, there's a certain someone that resembles Wesker to an excessive extent. And I'll give you a hint, his name is Zeno. Now, I won't get into the nitty-gritty of the fan theories, but Zeno is clearly modeled after Wesker. And Capcom even went as far to employ the same voice actor for the remake of Resident Evil 4 to play this character. They also gave Zeno some of Wesker's supernatural abilities from Resident Evil 5, and those make an appearance in certain sections of the game. But why would they do this? It feels like Capcom has been playing will they or won't they with themselves regarding Chris for almost a decade. And now we're seeing this with Albert. But I have to ask, is this merely fan service, or do they want to put Chris and Wesker in the spotlight again? If Capcom wanted to expand more on Chris and Wesker as characters, what would be a better way than to show us where it all began? In the place where most modern gamers won't go, the Spencer Mansion, deep in the Arklay Mountains. Now it's time to answer the question, does Resident Evil need a remake? Not necessarily. The game stands on its own, and is widely accessible to players that are willing to brave the janky controls and cheesy dialogue. But I guess the better question here is, does it deserve a remake? And the answer is absolutely. For the little mechanics that held the game back for modern players, to the amazing remakes already under Capcom's belt, this game does deserve its chance to really shine. And a fresh take on the game that started it all could be amazing for the series in the future. A modern engine with a beloved cast of voice actors and updated controls and visuals might be the route for Capcom if they want the series to be accessible to all new players, and leave room to expand on these characters that they love to reuse. This entry is far too important for the franchise as a whole to be left in the dust, only to be referenced in a few files and subsequent titles. And I know that Capcom is working on multiple different projects, whether that comes to remakes or new IPs, but I would love to see Capcom remake another masterpiece. But with that, I really do appreciate you watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to give a huge shout out to the homie Duck Marbles for giving me this idea and writing the script for this video. Without him, this video would not be possible, so I really want to give a shout out to him, and I want to link his channel down below. Go give him a follow, show some support. That is truly the homie, so I really do appreciate that. If you did enjoy this video, I do have further video essays and things like that coming in the future. I'd love to hear your input on this. What do you think? Does this game need a remake? Let me know in the comments down below.